All right, let's just jump right in. Think about your day online. You click, you scroll, maybe you buy something. Seems simple, right? But what if I told you that behind every single one of those choices, there's this invisible hand? It's a really powerful mix of AI and psychology, and it's quietly guiding what you see and what you do. So today, we're going to pull back that curtain.
It really comes down to this one big question. When you add that thing to your cart or, click to watch the next episode of a show, was that totally you, a moment of pure free will? Or was it the result of a perfectly designed little digital nudge? That's the mystery we're going to dig into.
So you might be asking, why all the effort? Why go to all this trouble? Well, it boils down to simple economics. Check this out. It costs a company 5 to 7 times more money to get a brand new customer than it does to just keep you. That's a huge difference, and that is exactly why they're pouring billions into figuring out how you tick and, making sure you stick around.
To really get what's going on, we have to understand what this invisible hand is actually made of. And it's not magic, not at all. It's a science, and it works because it plays on the predictable patterns of our own minds. Let's start with the psychology of it all.
For the longest time, classic economics was built on this idea that we're all rational, that we make these super logical decisions to get the best deal for ourselves. And hey, we all like to think that's true, right? But then this really fascinating field called behavioral economics came along and basically showed that, we're a lot weirder and more irrational than we'd like to admit.
So let's get into the why. Why are we so easily influenced online? It really all comes down to these little shortcuts our brains take every single second of the day just to process everything. And digital platforms, they've just gotten incredibly good at taking advantage of those shortcuts.
And this is the core idea right here. Behavioral economics isn't about throwing out the old rules. It's about adding a super important layer, psychology. It just accepts the reality that our decisions get pushed and pulled around by emotions, by those mental shortcuts, and by the way a choice is presented to us.
The tools of the trade here are what we call cognitive biases. Think of them as predictable glitches in our brain's software, like loss aversion. That's why a warning like "don't miss out" feels so urgent. We hate losing more than we love winning. Or anchoring. That's why seeing a really high original price makes a sale price look like a fantastic deal, even if that original price was, totally made up. Now, when platforms use these biases on purpose, that's what we call digital nudging. They're not forcing you to do anything, not at all. They're just designing the choice architecture, basically the environment where you make the decision to make one choice feel a little easier or a little more urgent or just more attractive than the others. Think about a pre-checked box on a form or a countdown timer in your shopping cart. That's a nudge. And this really lays it all out, doesn't it? Over on the left, you've got this theoretical, perfectly logical shopper from the old textbooks. And on the right, that's us. That's real life. We are, as the researcher Dan Ariely famously called it, predictably irrational. And it's that very predictability that technology has learned to tap into.
Okay, so we've got the why. It's our brain's shortcuts. So now let's talk about the how. What's the technology that puts all these psychological tricks into practice and at a massive global scale? The answer, of course, is AI.
I mean, just look at a behemoth like Amazon. Its personalization engine is an absolute masterclass in AI. It uses predictive analytics to guess what you might want before you even know you want it. It uses something called collaborative filtering, which is just a fancy way of saying people who bought this also bought that, but on steroids. And it even uses natural language processing to understand what people are really saying in the reviews. It's all designed to build this incredibly detailed picture of you. And does it work? Oh yeah, the payoff is just staggering. It's estimated that a whopping 35% of all of Amazon's sales come directly from its recommendation engine. That's not just some neat little feature, it's a core, fundamental part of their business, and it's all built on predicting your every move. And it's the exact same story over in the world of entertainment. Netflix uses really similar techniques. It analyzes not just what you watch, but when you watch it, what shows you give up on halfway through, and what you rate 5 stars. The AI even tests different thumbnail images for a movie to see which one is most likely to make you specifically click play. It's that detailed. And for Netflix, the recommendation engine is even more important. It drives an unbelievable 75% of all user engagement. Think about that. 3/4 of what people end up watching is because the algorithm decided to put it right in front of their face. So all of this brings us to this huge tension at the heart of our digital lives. On one hand,
This AI-powered personalization is amazing, right? It's super convenient. It helps us find stuff we might actually love. But on the other hand, to make it work, it needs to constantly collect a massive amount of our personal data, and that creates a very real dilemma.
And you know what? People are starting to catch on. This growing skepticism is a big deal. It shows we're kind of moving from a phase of just quietly accepting all this to being actively concerned about how our data is being used to, well, to influence us. And when you look at the hard data, the trade-off becomes crystal clear. A recent study asked people straight up, what do you value more? And 68%, a huge majority, said they prioritize their privacy over the convenience of personalization. The interesting thing, though, is that our online behavior doesn't always line up with that. This all leads to a really important question. We know these tools are out there, but how well do they actually work? I mean, how much do they really influence us? Well, a really detailed study decided to find out. They wanted to actually quantify the impact of specific AI marketing tools to measure, not just guess, what really sways our decision to buy something. Okay, first up, personalized product recommendations. You know, the classic "you might also like" feature. The study found that yes, it has a statistically significant positive effect on our choice to buy. The number you're seeing is just a way to measure that influence. So it definitely works, but as you're about to see, it's not the most powerful tool in the toolbox. Next, they looked at what's called AI-curated social proof. This is stuff like bestseller tags or trending now banners. It taps into our deep-seated need to follow the crowd. And guess what? It has an even stronger influence on our buying habits. We trust what the crowd is doing, even when that crowd is being highlighted for us by an algorithm.
But, okay, here is the real kicker. This last one, interactive AI, like chatbots and virtual assistants, it's the most powerful influencer by a long shot. I mean, look at that number. It's more than double the power of those product recommendations we just talked about. So why is that? Well, it's because it feels like you're having a real conversation. It's helpful, it feels kind of human, and it builds trust and answers your questions right then and there.
And this is the part that really blows my mind. When you combine the influence of just these 3 AI tools, the study found they can explain 68.5% of the variation in our purchase decisions. Let me say that again. That is a huge amount of influence, and it just goes to show how central these AI systems have become to how we shop today.
So where does that leave us? What are we supposed to do with this information? The point here isn't to be scared of technology. Not at all. It's to become more aware. Because this knowledge, this is the key to going from being a passive user to being an empowered digital consumer.
So what's the bottom line here? First, remember that your brain is hardwired with these little shortcuts, and AI is now programmed to hit those triggers. Second, that friendly little chatbot in the corner, that is probably the most persuasive tool you're going to come across. And finally, just always keep in mind that there's a trade-off. You're trading your data for personalized convenience. And honestly, just being aware of that whole dynamic is the single most powerful tool you have.
Which really just leaves us with one last thing to think about. We're living in a digital world that's constantly trying to predict your next move, to put you neatly in a box based on everything you've done before. So the real question is, now that you know how the game is played, how are you going to choose to be surprising?